From Caldon's position close to Devonish's tent, the army seemed composed of chaos with only a few pockets of order. There was movement in the front ranks, and shouts broke out. Caldon stood and looked past the human army. Farther away, he saw streams of Jukari approaching, far less orderly than the quivers. They stopped a few hundred yards away, the tips of their lines swelling like water pooling, until their numbers grew past his counting. They bellowed and snarled, a terrible animal sound. Commands roared through the Emperor's army, along with curses and battle songs. The quivers marched out to answer the Jukari, armor and weapons flashing in the sun. Drums pounded, horns pealed, booted feet stamped. Commanders dispersed among their troops, though Caldon noted that most led from the rear. The Jukari came on. Heavy thumps sounded from River's Edge, and at first Caldon couldn't work out what was happening. Then he saw specks arcing into the sky, missiles thrown from counterweighted trebuchets. He squinted as they reached their zenith and began plummeting to the earth. A low rumbling sounded. Clouds of dust and clods of dirt erupted where the stones landed, but nowhere near the Jukari. All the missiles fell short by hundreds of yards, with more following in the air. Hoots and barking came from the Jukari, who stood their ground, attention on the falling rocks. Overeager? Wondered Caldon. They had to know their shots would fall short. Then he saw that while the Jukari's attention was on the siege engine missiles, groups of quivers had run to the front of their ranks using the gaps between cohorts. They dropped baskets of arrows, raised their bows, and began firing. Missiles streaked into the sky, a dark rain ascending to the heavens, only to fall. Their shafts plunged into the Jukari, failing, as far as Caldon could see, to do much damage. But some Jukari did fall. Tiny figures in their front lines stumbled. The holes opened up by wounded or dead Jukari were quickly filled. Thunder rumbled, and Caldon frowned. He glanced to the sky, fearing sorcery, of which there was no sign. But there was movement on the hills. He squinted and let out a gasp. Hundreds of quiver cavalry crested the hills and poured toward the Jukari, steel-tipped lances gleaming, iron-rimmed shields hanging by their sides, hooves trampling the grass. Both the trebuchet missiles and the flights of arrows had been a distraction. The distance between the cavalry and the Jukari closed with frightening swiftness. Then the horses were among the creatures. Caldon could hear lances snapping from where he was, although it could also have been bones, along with the squealing of horses and barks from the Jukari. Splintered wood filled the air. Shouts and screams erupted. Lances now abandoned, swords were dragged from sheaths and flashed down. Injured horses toppled and flailed. Riderless mounts bounded away in a lather. The archers positioned themselves in the corridors between the armies, which were now advancing steadily on each other. Arrows still peppered the enemy, though they now were aimed farther behind and to the other side of the cavalry charge. Foot soldiers broke into a trot, urged on by their commanders, and then they were in the melee. Shields rose to meet Jukari weapons, and more often than not were broken by the force of the blows. Short spears and swords darted out in response. Yells and screams went up. Everywhere quivers hacked and slashed, weapons covered with black Jukari blood. More arrows rained down like angry insects. The cavalry withdrew and gathered themselves for another charge, while the Jukari milled in confusion. They turned their attention to the foot soldiers, only to once again get hammered with a howling rush of horsemen. They crashed through scattered lines with barely a pause, until they found themselves slowed as an organized mass of Jukari came to the fore. Blood pitched into the sky and to the ground, both red
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.